We speak about this at the company all the time and try to make sure that everybody understands that we are on a learning journey, and the faster that we can learn, the faster we can change our opinions with better ones, the better outcomes we're going to be able to deliver.
Javier Ferreira, co-CEO of Scopely. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michail. Great to be here.
That's an interesting point on having that internal team that brings the knowledge from one team to another.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, like, just having the connection between the two GMs is not enough.
No.
And because they have big teams, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, people are busy, People are busy and they have.
That's what I've noticed in big corporations is like it gets siloed really quickly, the more autonomous they get. So it's kind of like the good and bad come at the same time. Well, talking a little bit about the products, the games that you have. So at the time of this recording, Monopoly Go has surpassed $3 billion in lifetime revenues.
Yeah.
And another $1 billion came in just 4 months. $250 million a month.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
We were impressed.
Like, everybody has analyzed till nauseum Monopoly Go, but what do you consider are the sort of pillars of that game's commercial success?
The commercial success of the game has, first of all, been driven by some incredible kind of retention numbers. I mean, we're talking about kind of retention numbers that I hadn't seen for maybe a decade in kind of in mobile games. We're talking about well over 20% D30 retention, and it's not just D30 retention. I think the other thing that we saw on Monopoly was just the return rates and what we call the regularity, right, of users. That was just through the roof, coupled with very strong kind of monetization. So that was on the kind of game experience side of things. The second thing that drove the success of the title in a very meaningful way was the social kind of aspect of the game, and that drove the kind of success through two kind of fundamental kind of ways, right? One was in the game itself, the fact that you were playing with not just with strangers but with actual friends and family. Of course, supported the kind of engagement numbers that I'm talking about. And of course, when you come into a game because your friend has invited you, your retention and your engagement and monetization are very different than if you see a UA ad, right? The third one, and I think a lot of people have speculated about this, has been, I think you were referencing it, all the infrastructure that we built, both on the data and on the kind of marketing side, that allowed us to scale the game with a level of efficiency and with a level of success that I don't think has been achieved in free-to-play mobile games before. Monopoly is the fastest game in the history of mobile games to achieve $3 billion in revenue. And we were able to scale the game incredibly fast based on the KPIs of the game and the audience that we knew was there given the product and the IP. We did lean in, very hard on marketing the game because of the infrastructure and the teams and the technology that we had built. We were able to drive recoup rates at launch that were at the beginning in less than a week. For multiple months, we were recouping our marketing investments in less than a month. And by the way, we're not talking about spending $1 million a month. We were spending, dozens of millions of dollars. We were able to kind of, really build a highly kind of, highly scaled kind of tidal wave of players into the game. And we were able to activate all of these kind of community and social loops that we were talking about, whilst at the same time doing it at levels of profitability that were crazy. And I think the game was kind of profitable after 3 or 4 months live and has generated incredible kind of profitability since then.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the success of the game, just the numbers, it is a textbook hit. It was hit on every category.
Yeah.
Even myself, when I was like, first of all, like the retention and engagement, of course. And that's what you usually hear about the top games is like the D30 is well above 20%. And it's, for some people, it's like, well, what cohort, what this? Like, no. Just overall.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard for them to even believe that. And then the monetization, of course, it had a very proven monetization mechanic, but also the type of monetization that allows significant spending is huge. And that's often forgotten for some reason in our gears, because it's not only, as you said, the sort of a K factor that brings in players, but there's also the element of monetization and engagement with social, because if you're ahead, then I need to catch up. If I'm ahead, then you're catching up. There's more engagement, there's more monetization. And then, yes, the marketability with the IP, but also the platform and the resources that you have, because at that point you were a big company. You were able to spend dozens of millions of dollars on marketing a month.
It still takes a level of organizational kind of conviction, right, to deploy that amount of capital, because there's a bunch of kind of data people telling you that everything's going to be okay, right? Everything that we had learned, through the launch of kind of other games and the confidence that we had built in our own kind of tools and data accuracy and data science was important. I think it was also a moment of conviction, of the organization kind of saying, we're going to go and do this and we're going to go and maximize that opportunity.
It's interesting that Monopoly Go launched and scaled after the acquisition. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, it's kind of good for both parties.
I think it's perfect for everybody. Yeah, Monopoly Go was in soft launch when we were going through those kind of conversations, and Savvy and ourselves, we spent a lot of time talking about the potential of that game, and the timing was kind of very, very intentional. And to your point, we wanted to make sure that the acquisition was going to be a great outcome for our shareholders, of course, most importantly for our employees, but also that was going to be a great outcome for Savvy. That really matters.
Put the acquisition on a good start.
I think everybody has felt really great about the journey that's been on at the company, particularly our investors, I think, have all done really well.
Especially because had somebody acquired a company that has a booming product, then they expect that product to grow. Now they acquired before that the biggest product launched. Yeah. So now it's kind of all on the bonus. And you don't have the same type of pressure. Yeah. There is pressure, but you're already out delivering.
Yeah, the pressure comes. The pressure we put the pressure on ourselves always. But yeah, I think, as I said, the best type of acquisition is one where all the stakeholders are happy, and I think that's exactly what we achieved.
Let's talk about the games a little bit more before the acquisition part, because Scopely has acquired a ton of studios as well. So that's interesting to hear. But I wanted to ask about, Monopoly Go has an IP. Then we talked about Star Trek. There's Yahtzee, Scrabble, multiple different games. Now they all have great IPs. Yeah. What makes Scopely so good at working with IP? Because clearly this is the pillar of your strategy, is to work with big IPs.
It's not the IP, right, that does the work. As an example, there was a Yahtzee game before we launched Yahtzee. I think the game was doing $100,000 a year, and obviously our games does multiples of that a day, right? And you can say the same with kind of Star Trek. I think it all kind of starts first with, of course, choosing the right IP. And with IP, what we've always focused on is the audience. And when I say an audience, I would even kind of take it further, and I would say a fandom component. For example, IPs that might be very well known, there's no real fandom. Mm-hmm. And when I say fandom, I'm talking about the desire to exist in that universe, for long periods of time, hopefully with your friends and family, right? For example, a lot of movies can be huge, right? And they can be huge IPs, but people don't really want to spend time in those universes.
Like Hunger Games.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. We've always tried to kind of look for IPs that have this kind of fandom appeal. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, are you building the right game? You can get Star Trek, but if you make a Star Trek Match 3 game, I struggle to think that you're going to be successful. And so you got to kind of couple with the right kind of product strategy. And I think we've always been very deliberate, not in just, okay, we're looking for fandom, but also we are going to service the fandom. We're not going to write the IP. We're going to make the game that we think the fandom wants the most. So, for example, in the case of Star Trek, we thought that the fantasy of Star Trek was to be able to live in that galaxy and to kind of conquer the galaxy and to kind of enter into alliances and kind of fight other alliances, because we thought that was the core fantasy of the IP. So I think that's the second thing that you got to nail, and I think we've done well. And the third one is, even if you get both of those things right, you're still at the beginning. Having an IP and the right kind of product strategy supports a great outcome. That's not necessary. It's not sufficient to deliver a great outcome. I think studios and the game industry sometimes have seen IP as a shortcut. Mm-hmm. Generally, our experience has been that to get it right, it's more like a long cut, and that you need to get a lot of things right. For example, in the case of Monopoly, that is a free-to-play game. It's like we needed to kind of invent that. We couldn't just kind of say, we didn't just want to put a Monopoly board game on a phone. We wanted to put the fantasy of Monopoly. We've always been very patient and very deliberate in making sure that We got the right kind of fandom, that we had a great product strategy, but that we were also kind of building, a great game.
Yeah, and since you've delivered consecutively for these top IPs, it's probably easier for you to sign almost any IP now because you were, looking at Hasbro numbers, a great partner for any IP licensor.
Yeah, one of the most important IPs, let's say, within the Hasbro kind of board game family, right? And so we didn't start with Monopoly. Yeah. We started with Yahtzee, and with Yahtzee, we built a digital games business that was way, way bigger than the actual Yahtzee business that they had, right? And so we built that relationship, and we did Scrabble, and then we did Monopoly, So it's about kind of building those relationships. But it's really about building the trust. As you build trust, they allow you to service those three pillars that we mentioned, because sometimes they also have their own kind of, perspectives and ideas. I think very effectively, and I think this is credit to our kind of BD and kind of corp dev organization, we've been able to structure the deals in ways that are supportive of the outcome.
The deal making is a tough part.
Yeah, the IP is just kind of one component, but then ultimately is, how good is the game? How much are you investing in making it better? Investing in marketing, are you thinking about a 6-month horizon? Or are you thinking about we're building a business for the next 10 years? Sophisticated lens for a lot of those kind of conversations or horizons. And that has allowed us to kind of find a lot of repeatable success.
And that gradual approach, as you said, long-term partnerships with the holders where they have trust towards what you're doing. Do you see your Scopely making a game with its own IP?
We are making right now a number of games with our own IP, and as well as we have a number of games in development. And we never really thought about the business in that way. And I know it sounds maybe kind of counterintuitive looking from the outside. We got to build something that is really going to resonate in deep ways with the audience, and the audience needs to have a magnetism towards discovery of the experience. But we have a couple of kind of great teams within the company that are going after answering that kind of question through original IP for sure. When we took over kind of Stumble Guys, the game had been built by a couple of people, right? And they were kind of great people and incredibly creative. And we've done a kind of great job of making that the kind of preeminent kind of party game, within mobile. There's more than kind of, 50 million kind of players playing that game every month, which is a huge number. We've invested a lot in kind of build that community and elevating that IP. We see that for sure as, part of the kind of Scopely journey and the Scopely success. And just now we were talking about, where are we going to take that IP next? And as I said before, we've learned a lot about IP building, different types of relationship with community, ways of marketing, that kind of, those kind of games that I think we're going to apply to a lot of the original IP efforts that we have going forward.
One thing that when I'm thinking about, like, if there's one adjective to use with Scopely, to me, it's, I would say tenacious. And it's because of the way you've launched your games and developed them. So, like, using, let's say, Monopoly Go as an example, to my understanding, that game had quite of a big over pivots, and that has seemed to happen with a lot of your different games where the soft launch period is really, really long, where you're just trying to figure out, like, how to make it, how to launch this. Because especially working with an IP, there's minimum guarantees, there's the IP holders, there's all that stress coming from the outside. There's the stuff internally where you see that the game is not going anywhere or it's not delivering what it should be. There's years in development. Like, how do you have those difficult conversations? How you justify investing more where you kind of don't see the results from it and you have the pressure?
Yeah. We're never surprised by failure. We expect it, right? I think this is important. This is kind of an important concept. If you think that you're going to make a game and that is going to be a journey of success, then do not abandon that journey, because you're going to be disappointed. The potential of a game based on where it's at any one particular moment. That is, it's succeeding. Well, we know it might be succeeding right now in the development cycle, but 6 months from now, every single game that we have kind of made has gone through every successful game that we have made has gone through a kind of, so what we call the kind of dark tunnel kind of period where it feels that there's no, light at the end of the tunnel. So making sure that that's the expectation that we all have. That is, the game team needs to have that expectation. But also the rest of the company. Within a company like ours, people have an opinion. Well, we should kill this game. We should invest more in this game. This game has massive potential. This game is gonna win. This one is gonna fail. That debate was always alive, and that did 100% of the company believe that game was going to be successful? Absolutely not. I think for me, game making is a process of conviction. It's about building conviction and having the resilience to kind of follow your conviction. How do we kind of build that conviction? First, do we believe in the product strategy? In the case of Monopoly, we always thought that we did, around the kind of power of the IP, the desire to see that game as a kind of live service in mobile, which had never been done, right? So that's the first thing that I focus on and that we focus on. The second thing is the team. Do we believe in the team? Great teams do some great things and they also do some stupid things. Of course, I include myself in the doing stupid things. I think the third one, and this might be the most important, does the game team believe in the game? Mm-hmm. This is very difficult one to kind of ascertain because the team has always a bias to tell you that they believe in the game. They have a bias, right? They
jobs.
Yeah, they jobs, dynamics, reputation, all kinds of things. So it's something that you have to investigate and research. But when you find that the team is great and that great team of truly exceptional people still believe on what they're trying to do, that to me kind of builds a lot of conviction. Mm. If those three things are in place, what you just need is time. Just need time. Time is expensive. Time sometimes can be painful as well, right? Because nobody wants later. Everybody wants now or yesterday. Again, going back to the kind of what is the responsibility of the leadership team and of the CEOs. Yeah, you got to protect the organization from pain. And we try to make sure that we give our teams the time and the space to, continue on the journey. If we believe in the product, we believe in the team, and the team believes in the product, every single time that we have done that, time has been a friend. And the problem is that when you're on the journey, time feels like your enemy, but ultimately time turns out to be your friend.
I'm asking this question because a lot of time people don't understand the role of an executive in these situations, because if you don't do anything and this game ends up burning, in development, a ton of money, the IP holder is not happy, nobody's happy, the team is not happy, team leaves and so forth. It becomes a disaster, like in all possible way. If you haven't done anything, that's your fault. And that's why the question is about, like, when do you intervene and how do you intervene is a very interesting one, because if you intervene too early, you might be the fault of why it failed. If you intervene too late, again, it's your fault. So it's like, the question is more is like, what is the right time and the right way to intervene?
I intervene all the time. And I think we try to kind of create a process and forums where not just myself, but other people intervene all the time. The intervention is not top down. The intervention is not, I know. But the intervention is more, hey team, do you have the right product strategy? Next Monday, is the product strategy really good? And next Tuesday, what about your team? Is it really good? I'm not sure that this person, or what about we still have a gap here. And then on Wednesday, it's about, tell me how you feel about the game. What are your concerns? What are your fears? And so it's not like, oh, we're going to a green light meeting and here comes a couple of kind of executives saying, oh, we like the game or we don't like the game. It's kind of ongoing intervention, but the intervention is not in the service of our opinions, but in the service of some core beliefs that we collectively hold, right? And it's about kind of questioning all of us, questioning ourselves all the time. Do we have the right answers for those three things? And if we do, and we never do, right? The answer is always getting a little bit better, That's for what for us kind of intervention. I think maybe I would add the fourth one, which is, I said, that protection for the team. Have their own opinions, right? And as I said before, 50% of Scopely at some point would have maybe said, what are we doing with this Monopoly thing? The 50% would have said, this is the best thing that's ever happened to us. Then you have the IP holder, you have, all the stakeholders. And so making sure that intervention is also mostly about protection. It's about an iterative process of us working together. I don't bring truth, but I bring a different perspective. What we always demand from our teams is that they need to be open to those kind of different perspectives, right? I sit at a different perspective that allows me, from the perspective from where I'm kind of looking at things, there's some things that I don't see. And I'm now well equipped to have an opinion about those things. But there's other things that I see better than anybody else. And so they also need to be open to that kind of stuff.
And I think that's a really important point, because you're talking about your relationship with the GM in this case. And there's like what sometimes developers don't understand is the role of responsibility. So you are responsible of the commercial success of the game just as much as they are.
100%.
And the role of a GM is not only to lead the team, not only to have the right product strategy, the right team, and create the belief inside of the team.
You got to be open, and of course, in some cases, take kind of valuable feedback and inject it into how you running that organization.
I think that's really valuable information how you run your GM organization, because I know that there's sense that people sometimes think that it's best when the studios are left alone.
No,
and to me, it's like when studios left alone, that studio is about to be shut.
Anybody that's left alone is gonna, in my opinion, always under-deliver versus the potential that they have if they are surrounded by great people.
Well, so I was kind of going back to these three pillars that you mentioned around what builds conviction and resilience: product strategy, team composition, let's put it this way, or talent
density.
Yeah, talent density, exactly, and the game team's belief in the game itself. I think these are really good because, like, I've seen these used by just them in many companies. Like, if you believe in what you're doing, then you can continue to do it. And that can often lead to delusion in those products that have no audience. Then have a great team and you will win. Kind of like the sort of a Real Madrid type of approach. It's like, no, Real Madrid has a coach and like strategy. Like, it's not just put great people together and they deliver magic.
And the Galacticos did nothing. I mean, Barcelona, we destroyed them, you know? So, of course, you need much more than just a great team.
Yeah, but there's this sort of approach where you would say, oh, they just have the best players and that's why they always win. And then the product strategy is like, that is, for somewhat reason, what I often feel with a lot of mobile gaming companies especially, they don't want to even talk about strategy. And they start off with that sort of a like 2010, 2012 type of approach. Let's just prototype some fun stuff. Let's find what works and then let's build on top of that. And there's many success cases. I mean, the whole Supercell portfolio is basically built like that. And that's almost seen as the one right way. But you have this approach of like, no, we have a strategy. We know what we're building, who we're building for, what is the competition. Like, we know everything around us and we constantly look at it. Has this changed? If it has changed, is the strategy still viable? If the strategy is not viable, it doesn't matter if you have a great team and you have a team that believes in what they're doing. We have to change the strategy to be able to execute on what we're doing.
Correct. Yeah. As I said at the beginning, with this awareness that even if you have all of those things in place, it's gonna be a tough kind of road. You're gonna fail on that road. And I think also when you encounter that failure, I think that's when a lot of teams and companies kind of fall apart. And you need to kind of make sure that when you encounter that failure, you use that as a great opportunity to come out of it stronger.
So, kind of switching topics and talking about the acquisition of Scopely by Savvy. So, $4.9 billion in 2023.
Correct.
Yes. What has this type of acquisition enabled? Like, what has changed with Scopely? How you operate? Like, I don't think internally, but probably externally. Like, what has really changed?
There were a number of kind of parties interested in kind of in acquiring kind of Scopely at that time, and for us, we chose Savvy, right? We chose it because first we believe that the type of mission that we were on, and the type of experience that we want to have, was best served by staying as a private company. What the Savvy acquisition has allowed us to do is to stay private without, by the way, the kind of pressure of valuations and maybe raising more money. And also, this is really important for a startup, and it's okay to talk about it, and also allowed people to remove the downside of a startup, right? Scopely started being worth nothing, and then it ended up being $4.9 billion. Well, there's a lot of people that accumulate a lot of wealth. We're here for 5, 8, 10 years, right? When you're going to have an exit like this, it just removes a lot of the fear. What it's allowed us to have is, to stay private in a really kind of solid, really solid platform where we are thinking about the upside. What can we do kind of from here? We have an investor who is very long-term oriented, who has been, incredibly respectful of our strategic and operational kind of autonomy, and who is kind of focused on how they can help us rather than how they can change us. And that has changed how we think about the future and how ambitious we can be. And fundamental thing is that I think it's allowed us it has allowed us and the team to be more ambitious and to think bigger because we have a platform that is incredibly solid, very protected, and very, very long-term.
That really makes sense because kind of like thinking about other potential acquirers that you would have, Scopely would have either become like a mobile arm of a large mobile or large game development powerhouse, or it could have become, enabler of somebody else. But now you're being enabled by having essentially switched the many investors that you had from multiple funding rounds to just only one who has a lot of capital and who is, very patient in terms of their investment. Yeah, and also it puts you in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and also very strategic in how they see the kind of gaming space. They want to make a strategic contribution to the space. But yes, the way that you're framing, I think it's accurate. Acquisitions generally can be dilutive to organizations. In this case, it really has been an enabler of what we try to do, and I think it's really going to accelerate our path moving forward over the next few years.
Is there a risk with increased capital? Like, I'm just thinking about this way. So you have big ambitions and you have a gigantic game. You're generating multiple billions of dollars a year, so you have to make bigger games. Yeah. And now you have no abundance of capital. You can go for big screen games, AAA, easily. Can you end up in a situation where you bite more than you can chew?
Yeah. Here's what I would say. Mm-hmm. Yeah, risk is always there. It just manifests itself in different kind of ways. Back in the days, it was like, oh, are you guys going to be able to kind of be profitable? Are you guys going to be able to make a game? Are you guys going to be able to kind of go to Barcelona? There's no value creation with that risk. It's not going to happen because if there's no risk, it's because all the value has already been created, right? I think what we need to be aware is of the risks. Like what you need to be self-aware of, what are the risks that you're facing at any one particular point in the journey. I think the successful organizations are the ones that try to go after that, but at the same time are self-aware. These are the things that we don't know in order to kind of go after this market and to achieve these kind of goals. How do we learn those things? Who can teach us? What are the capabilities? What is the evolution that we need to have in our organization to go after that? And I think we are having those conversations all the time and trying to make sure that that risk gets navigated, The products that we're working on kind of on a go-forward basis are incredibly exciting. In some cases, they're very expensive. Not only are they very expensive, some of them are going to fail. And we're just going to have to kind of move on. And I think the important thing is that we know that. And at the same time, believe me, that we work very, very hard to kind of make sure that doesn't happen. But I think we have a really kind of strong and solid strategy. And now it's a question of growing into that strategy. Like strategy always needs to be ahead of your capabilities.
Of course.
If your strategy is not ahead of your capabilities, then you probably do something wrong.
Talking about M&A and growing, so Scopely has done a lot of M&A in the past, but you've never been the sort of big spender in the M&A market, and you also haven't had the typical fails of an M&A, because normally when you're acquiring a company, no matter what the industry, the fail rate is between 70 to 90%. Just because the integration is so difficult to be a part of the organization, and then the value is not created was when intended.
Yeah.
So talking about your growth, are you changing the way you're viewing M&A? Because if I understand correctly before, the way you started game projects is like, the product strategy that usually is an IP, then you have an internal team that is stacked with talent density.
Yeah.
And then you quite often had an external team that had expertise in the certain genre that team was executing against. And then when the team reached the position where that game was launched globally, you made the acquisition of the external team so that your goals were aligned.
Correct.
And they would continue to execute against live operations instead of, sandbagging or whatever may happen when the actual growth is needed.
Yeah.
Has that changed? Or
that's one of the ways that we kind of, make games. In the case, for example, of Monopoly, it was 100% kind of developed by kind of internal teams. But yes, we continue to kind of partner with teams that, again, know things that we don't know when or can kind of meaningfully make that game team or that game franchise, better. Collection of a lot of Scopely kind of people partnering with people that are not employed at Scopely. And to me, the key thing is that they need to kind of come together as a team, have a shared kind of goals and purposes and shared incentives. And that's why we structure the deals the way that we structure them. winning means the same for both parties. This is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just mentioning that because you've been very successful with your M&A where it's been accredited, but it hasn't been as big, you haven't been on a spending spree as some of the developers, but you've been on a tear in that sense.
Course integration is never easy, but I think a lot of the M&A deals fail not because of integration, but because of diligence. I've seen some deals in the mobile gaming space, large ones. It's like, how did this happen? Because as an outsider from 1,000 miles, like you could see it. We have a team and an operating system that is doing M&A every single day, and sometimes we joke, man. It's like, we go into these kind of M&A meetings. It's like, how is it that after 10 years, we're still doing so much M&A? It's always incredibly active. It's part of our operating system. And so we have conviction around that, and we believe in that strategy. But having said that, the orientation is always no, because what we need to do is be convinced to being a yes. I think a lot of the times when M&A kind of goes wrong is because you're desperate about the yes. And you start ignoring all the warning signals about a no. It's helped us, significantly on a couple of crossroads where we could have made some pretty costly and, meaningfully kind of bad decisions.
Yeah, they are costly when they go sideways.
Exactly, yeah.
Talking about today, a couple more questions. Like you've been very vocal about why the game industry, especially now, needs to be more optimistic during the difficult time. What's your advice for the folks who are in the industry who are being laid off? Like there's tens of thousands of them already. And for them, it seems like the worst time ever, which is understandable from their own personal perspective. It's layoff news every week. What's your advice for people who are in a very unfavorable and unlucky position?
Yeah, the games industry continues to be a thriving ecosystem. It's one of the kind of largest entertainment kind of categories in the world, I think, both in terms of revenue and audience. Of course, a very creative industry, but it is also a very technology-driven industry. And I think it's an industry that has proven that it leans into kind of technology, kind of disruption and advances faster than anybody. I would say that it's a kind of space really continue to work in. Worth kind of continue to invest in. At the individual level, look, I also think that one of the great things about the games industry is that it's people-led, people-driven. I think there's very few industries where talent can have such a direct impact on the outcome, not of a game, of a company.
Yeah.
One person, a team of 5, a team of 10 can basically kind of change the trajectory of a company like Scopely. You can build an amazing kind of career, and you can have huge impact. You can have a great outcome, and I think the future is still very bright for the industry, and it's a lot of great things still to come.
Yes, yeah, that's well put. So, kind of ending in this on a something more positive. What else are you excited about? Of course, Scopely's growth, and apart from Scopely in the games industry, like what else is exciting when looking in the future?
A community of players that have passion for an experience, really elevating a game, and the group of people behind that game, they cannot be manufactured. It is something that only the community can do. So I think that's a really kind of exciting kind of dynamic. And again, going back to the state of gaming, I think something that we should be very proud of. I think there's very few media categories where that happens, if any. I think also related to that, user-generated content. It's exciting. There's just so much technology and tools that are happening in that space that are going to empower. Companies do not make games. People make games. Teams make games. And I think it's going to be very exciting when people and teams can be built truly outside of companies in a very kind of flexible ways. And I'm certainly, as I said before, excited about continuing to evolve these games as a service. And we say games as a service, games as a service to players, right? Because in the free-to-play games as a service kind of model, you can only build a business and you can only make revenue if you're making your players happier every day.
Javier, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mishka. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
We talked last time 4 years ago. Let's talk again 4 years ago. I can't even imagine how big the company is then. With the rate of speed. Hope everybody enjoyed the podcast. I think there's a lot of learnings. So thank you for being candid.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you.